years, I can never remember a time like this. The past 5 years, for sure, have been the most demanding on educators that I've ever experienced. The level of accountability, which is fine, but the level of accountability, a lot of educators didn't get into this business to be held to the level of accountability that they're being held to. They didn't. And now every year, I mean, what's happening is a new evaluation system called RISE is coming into the fold, where teachers have got to demonstrate performance improvement, not just with their teaching skills, but they have to demonstrate that students are growing in their achievement. And if I'm a teacher and if I'm not showing that my students are growing in their achievement, then I may not get any kind of increase in pay. So in the private sector, that's how business a lot of times works. If you don't do the job, you don't get rewarded. But in education, that's not been the culture. In education, you could start out of college, and every year for 20 years, you get an automatic increase or step in pay, just because you have another year of experience. No longer. That's no longer the case around the state. Now, we have a contract with our teachers through 2015. So our teachers are somewhat protected until 2015. But when that runs out, then our teachers, if they want raises in pay, they've got to earn it. Okay? So that's a huge change in the thought process. Next slide. I talked about financial stability. I've gone through some things that we've done in terms of looking at our budget. We're looking at about I would say we've actually redetermined. We had an independent financial analysis done of our school system. I wanted to have a baseline for where we actually were, because we brought in a new CFO shortly after I came in. And at one point we thought we were about 2.7 million. I think it's going to be more like 1.9 million. Expenditures exceeding revenue. That's still not good, but it's better than it was. Now, how we're going to have to address that is we have to look at our staffing. 92% of our general fund, which pays for staff, 92%. So the state, remember, they give us $5,000 plus per student? That's almost $70 million that we get from the state. 92% of that $70 million pays salaries and benefits. So the only way that I see that we can reduce to get expenditures in line with revenues is we're going to have to really be more efficient with our staffing. So that's, now I've already talked about the property tax impact, but we have to get that appropriate, we've got to get our budget balanced, and we've got to start building the cash balance. I've talked about the importance of technology. We need to develop a plan for capital projects and technology. Technology today, it is a never-ending, huge commitment. People want to have one-to-one initiatives. Let's put a computer or an iPad in front of every child. Well, a colleague of mine in the East Allen County schools up near Fort Wayne, similar size school system, they just gave iPads this year to every 3rd through 12th grader. It was a almost $3.9 million investment just to put them in their hands of every student and teacher. $3.9 million. Now they're going to pay for those over a 3-year period, leasing them through Apple for $1.3 million a year. So you have to generate $1.3 million a year just to keep that program going. So it's not as easy as some people might think. Plus, you have to make sure they're being utilized. Teachers have got to be trained. Teachers have got to be able to be monitored and held accountable to using them. So we have to have a plan if we're going to do this. And then I talked about public relations and marketing. We really just need to have some consistent messaging. What's happened to us at Jeff High School in the last several weeks is extremely unfortunate. It does not help the perception that we're trying to portray to our community. It's something that we have to deal with, that we have to move forward. There's no other way around it. We've got to address it, and we've got to move forward. But it doesn't help us. But the one thing I want to keep in mind is I was in high school all day today. I spent the whole day in high school. We've got great kids and great teachers and great administrators in that building doing great things every day. So I know the media will focus on 1 or 2 major issues, and I understand how that works, but I want to assure you that if you came over to Jeffersonville High School and you spent the day with me, you would see a lot of great things. People have a perception that is not accurate. of that building. That building is doing some great work with kids and for kids, but that's also true in every other building in our school system. And we're trying to tell that story. We've got great things and great kids going on everywhere. All right, that's maybe a bit longer than you wanted, so I tried to share a lot of information. Any questions you might have? Yes, sir.
Question, you're losing these students and maybe going somewhere else. So let's say someone lives in North Haven and should be going to Jeff High. How do they get the right to live in North Haven, hypothetically, and maybe go to New Albany High School?
You know what happened? A couple of years ago, the legislature sort of changed the rules to allow for, if school systems wanted, they could open their enrollment to kids from any other school corporation. So, let me give you some quick examples. I came from Valparaiso, up in Northwest Indiana before I came here. Valparaiso we did not allow any kids who did not live in our school corporation to attend our schools. We closed our borders. That was the policy. So a lot of people wanted to come in. It was a very high-performing school system, but we had to say, no, if you don't live here, you won't go to school here. I come down here, and it's open season. You've got billboards posted, and I'm not here to take anything away from anybody else. There are a lot of great schools do a lot of great things. I just want to compete. I don't want to lose our own people to other schools. But the reality is, right now, the school systems say, if you want to come, we'll take you. It doesn't matter where you live. So let me give you some examples. I'll try to be quick. We're doing a study. We had 75 students who were enrolled in our school corporation on June 1 of 12. They ended the school year in our school corporation. 75 of them are now in the Silver Creek, are at Silver Creek. So they're in West Clark. 75. Now, what we're trying to figure out now is how many kids from Silver Creek have come our direction. My bet is that it's not even. I bet that the number is not going to be equitable. Our people, as I do listening sessions, people are leaving us to go to Silver Creek. People are leaving us to go there. Now, here's the reality. I'm not here to speak badly of Silver Creek. They do great work over there. But our students are performing at a similar level. We have even broader programs. So then you ask the question, why would you do that as a parent? Because if you're going to make that move, you'd want to go because of the academic achievement is so much greater. That's what I want for my child. I have 3 children in our school corporation. I have a 9th grader at Jeff High, I have a middle schooler at Parkview, and I have a 4th grader at Utica. Okay? Why would you want to go somewhere else? Well, maybe I want more academic achievement, but that's not necessarily the case at Silver Creek. So why are you going? Why are kids making decisions to leave from, instead of attend Parkview and River Valley, they're choosing to go to Silver Creek? Perceptions. Absolutely. And sometimes people are threatened by adversity. I'm just going to say it. I've been in listening sessions. I'm listening to people. That's not just my opinion. I ask. Well, some people don't like the diversity that our school system has in the Jeffersonville area. My family, that's what we chose. That's what we wanted for our children. But that's not what everyone wants for their children. It's a challenge right now for us.
All right.
It's a challenge. I mean, and that's the game that's being played. And being a former basketball coach, I always try to look at all the variables, and I try to figure out how do you win. If we're not as big as the opponent, or if the opponent's faster than we are, or whatever the situation is, then how do we change our game plan to compete and give ourselves a chance to win? And that's what I'm trying to figure out with the help of a lot of other people in our district. What other questions? Yes, sir.
I know something I'm wondering sometime, both here and across the river, transportation costs. That doesn't really add any thing to your education by doing that. And what is that cost to Greater Park? And that's certainly, if you could figure out a way around that, that'd be a big step toward your
It is, you know, we have about 100 regular bus drivers and 40 contracted bus drivers. That's a lot of bus drivers. And as you can imagine, you know, we have buses driving all over the place to get kids where they have to go. You know, bus transportation is a privilege. It's not a right. But the way things function now in our community, it's almost a necessity that we provide it with just the nature of our communities. So what we have to do is become smarter and more efficient with how we're transporting kids. For example, one of the things we're looking at are GPS units on buses, where we'll be able to track the actual number of miles traveled by our drivers. So if they're driving actually 55 miles in a day, then that's what they're getting paid for. And sometimes without that system in place, that you may not have as accurate a number. And so we need to find ways to become more efficient. Maybe we can merge routes, 2 routes into one, because it would just barely fill one bus. So we have to become more efficient in our transportation operation. So we have a new, our current Director of Transportation, Dr. Clayton, is retiring in December. And we have offered a position which has been accepted by another individual from outside of our area, and I'll take his name to our board next Tuesday. But he is the kind of individual, the superintendent I called where he works now, he said he's the best transportation director that they've ever had. But this gentleman has family in our area and he wants to get paid. So that's to our benefit.
You showed retaining students, that's something you're aiming for. What about teacher attrition? Do you notice any of that? Because the paperwork involved, the new system of accountability, I don't have time to teach. I've got to do all this paperwork.
It is more demanding than it's ever been. I will just tell you that. It's not for the faint of heart. And in fact, I don't know if you've read this or heard this, but there was just a study released that there are fewer students at college level going into teacher preparation programs now. And they're saying it is because of the great demands and the level of accountability. And Dr. Duncan, Arnie Duncan, who's the federal director of Secretary of Education, heard him speak last year up in northwestern Indiana. And one person said, what would you want to do differently in this country to make an immediate impact on the quality of education? He said, we need to pay teachers a lot more money. Mm-hmm. And now now listen to this. In other top performing countries in the world, let's just take Finland, for example. What he'll say to you is teachers in Finland are treated like doctors and lawyers. Not only in terms of the prestige of their job, but in terms of the amount of money that people make. If you want the best, you have to have the best teaching kids. So one of the things that I'm worried about is instead of getting our top performing kids out of high school wanting to come back and be in education, if they're worried, if they're threatened, if they're making choices to go elsewhere, that's not helping our country. We've got to start working through that because you're only as good as the people who work for you. So I'm worried about that. And we currently have 58 teachers who are over 60 years of age. So out of 650 teachers, I believe is our number, 650, we have 58 that are over 60. And so there's a worry there that those individuals are very close to saying, I'm ready to move into something else, some other part of life, and now we lose all that experience, and a lot of it could be due to the demands that are placed. And if we then can't recruit high top quality young people out of college because they're choosing to go elsewhere, we've got to stop that. We've got to get that stopped.
Another question, I had a friend of mine who's a retired principal and teacher for many years said he could sit in a teacher's class and tell before the class was over whether that person had the magic or not. And those that don't probably should be looking at other areas of
I will tell you what I've always told principals. I've been a superintendent now in 3 districts, and I've said this. When you hire someone, that's the most important thing you do, is hiring teachers. When you hire them, you have to really work hard that first year to determine whether those teachers have the God-given talent to do what's best and do what's right for kids. And you know it. And if they don't have it, then you have to tell them in their first year that I don't think you have it. This is not the profession for you. Coach them, help them, do everything in your power to help them be successful. But if they don't have it by the end of that first year, you've got to cut them loose. Now, in this state, if you're called a non-permanent teacher in your first 2 years of employment, so I could have that, I could release them from their teaching contract, not renew them in the first 2 years with very little what's called due process. So to me, if you think that if they're on the borderline and you think that they're trying hard to get better, you might give them a second year, but you can't go beyond that, because then it's going to be much more difficult to reduce your teachers that may not be as highly skilled.
In hiring a new principal at the high school, will that be a function of your administration or function of the school board?
That's a function of my administration. All the decisions that have been made are my responsibility related to that high school and administration. You know, concerns come to my attention, and when they come to my attention, it's my job to investigate, and when I investigate, I do that thoroughly and fairly, and then I have to make decisions. And that's what's happening. So, now of course the other matter that just recently occurred, that was a shock to everyone in our school system with the assistant principal. That was just not even, couldn't even be possibly fathomed by anyone. But moving forward, it's my job to make sure we put people in a position that I believe will be the right fit to help that school continue to move forward in a positive direction. There have been positive steps and positive moves. We need to keep that momentum going. And believe me, I think we can take that high school to even higher heights. We're just getting started. So it'll be my responsibility. Now, the school board has to approve the recommendations I bring forward. So whenever I make a decision, the board has a right to say yes or no or whatever. But
My question is whether you went to the school board, or the school board comes down to you and tells you who you're
no.
going to hire.
When I came, I
Seems
will
like
be.
there's a lot of personal agenda.
But you know what? Out in the public, there's a lot of conversation about that I'm beholden to certain board members and certain things are going to happen, all that.
I'm not making that assumption.
Or
am I implying
I'm
that?
sorry. I didn't mean to say that you were, but I know there are other people who are, because I've been told. So I can just tell you that I don't go out and look for issues, but when they come to me, I investigate them, and I'm paid to make these decisions, and I make the decisions to the best of my ability, and so this is all my doing. I do not have a board that's telling me you better do this or else, or forcing me to make choices. In fact, I really couldn't work for a board like that, to be honest. I mean, I'd rather work together as a team, make sure they're informed, we communicate, we have the same expectations. You know the evaluation model that I talked about for teachers? There's a new model for superintendents. And I'm going to be held to the same level of accountability by the board as our teachers are. It's all up and down, it's all the same, and that's fine with me. And if I don't do the job, I have 3 years. I have a 3-year contract, and if I don't do the job in 3 years, I don't deserve to remain your superintendent. All I ask is give me the opportunity to prove what I can do. And so far, the board is allowing me to do that. The board is allowing me to do the work that I believe I have to do. That's a good question. Anything else?